Hello everybody and welcome to Tiger Tales, a place you'll find stories and fanfictions written and read to you by your host, me, Tai Tiger. Today we're diving in to Pokemon The Lost Chronicles. These are one-off stories or several parters revolving around different Pokemon trainers, OCs written by me, and sometimes loosely based off people that I know, and these just tell one-off tales within the Pokemon world. Now, today's chapter is going to be a multi-parter, but not only that, this is dedicated to my son, Logan. Logan turned 5 this year, in 2024, and he's a huge Pokemon fan. Me and him have watched almost all of Pokemon, and we're really enjoying the new season. So, to dedicate something to him, I wanted to do something Pokemon related, so why not put him in my Pokemon series? That being said, this is a multi-parter, and the Pokemon team that Logan uses in this was actually picked by my son Logan himself. So with that being said, let's begin. Pokemon The Lost Chronicles, Logan and the Grand Pokemon Championship Part 1. Logan vs. Crash. The arena was lit. Surrounding it was a hyper, happy and cheering audience. The screens airing the fight to all screens across the globe. The announcer floated in on his Agislash.
Today we have our first fight of the Grand Pokemon Championship. We have a small-town trainer. He's been fighting his way through the regions, and now he is here to fight his way through the Grand Championship. I give you Logan.
The announcer called out. Logan walked out onto the stage. Everyone started cheering. His face was slightly red from the embarrassment. On the battle information screen, his card appeared with his face and his 3 Pokemon that he chose for the battle. He stood there, ready to battle, and prepared himself mentally.
And on the other side, we have a trainer from the Galar region. I give you Crash.
The announcer called out. Crash ran out waving at the cheering fans. His card also appeared on the battle screen information. Then he stood there on the other side of the arena, facing Logan head on.
The rules are simple, 3v3. The battle ends when one trainer has no more Pokemon to battle with, deeming his opponent the winner. Mega Evolutions, Gigantamax forms, and Z-moves are allowed, but 1 use per trainer. With that being said, trainers, call your Pokemon.
The announcer ordered. Logan and Crash both pulled out their Pokeballs, and they doubled in size in their hands. Then they threw out the balls into the air, and both opened, and white light exploded from the balls, and Dreadnought stood before Crash, and before Logan was an Espeon. Ready, Espeon? Logan asked his psychic Pokemon. Espeon purred in response.
Me and Dreadnought are going to give y'all a show.
Crash called out to the audience. He was met with a massive cheer. Crash is a people pleaser. This should be rather fun, Logan muttered to himself.
Alright folks, we have Dreadnought versus Espeon. Let the battle begin.
The announcer called out, now the battle referee for the fight.
Dreadnought, use Ice Beam.
Crash ordered. Dreadnought opened its mighty jaw, and a massive beam of ice erupted from its mouth. It flew at Espeon. Espeon dodged the icy attack. Espeon, use Psybeam, Logan called out. As Espeon landed, the gem on her head started glowing, and the Psybeam exploded from it, and struck Dreadnought directly on its head, making it stagger backwards.
Dreadnought, let's try Body Slam.
Crash ordered. Dreadnought leapt forward, tilting itself forward, crashing into Espeon's shell first, crushing Espeon into the ground. Espeon screeched out in pain.
Clamp down with a crunch.
Crash barked. Dreadnought spun around and opened its mouth. Its teeth started glowing as it clamped down on Espeon. Espeon yelled out and tried to struggle itself out of the clutches of Dreadnought's jaw. Don't panic, Espeon, you psychic! Logan yelled. Espeon stopped wriggling. Its eyes started glowing a bright colour. Dreadnought started glowing as well as it floated into the air, letting go of Espeon, and floated higher into the air. Then it was thrown higher up before Espeon's eyes turned back to normal, and Dreadnought fell back to the ground. Now, Espeon, you swift! Logan barked. Espeon opened its mouth. An array of yellow stars exploded from its mouth and collided with the falling Dreadnought. There was a minor explosion, and Dreadnought crashed onto the floor. After the smoke cleared, Dreadnought was laid there unconscious.
Dreadnought is down for the count, meaning Crash is down 1 Pokemon.
the announcer called out.
Oh wow, you did a good job, Dreadnought. Return, buddy.
Crash said to his Pokemon as he held out his Pokeball, and then Dreadnought returned. Crash then pulled out another Pokeball and threw it into the air, and Arcanine then stood before Crash.
Crash's second Pokemon is Arcanine.
The announcer called out. Logan stood there with a grin. Alright, let's mix it up, shall we? Logan muttered. He then pulled out a Pokeball and returned Espeon. He then threw out another Pokeball and an Inteleon stood before him.
Logan decided to switch Pokemon. Now he's battling with Inteleon.
The announcer said.
Arcanine, flame charge.
Crash ordered. Arcanine ran as fast as it could. Its entire body set ablaze as it charged at Inteleon. Inteleon, do it! Logan muttered. Inteleon turned invisible. Everyone in the audience gasped. Crash stood there, shock painted all over his face. Logan stood there with a grin.
Arcanine, you gotta keep yourself safe. We cannot see our opponent. Use flamethrower everywhere.
Crash ordered. Arcanine blasted a huge roaring flame from its mouth and started blasting the ground, scorching everywhere around it. The fire blazed around it, trying to keep itself safe. It looked left and then it looked right, trying to find Inteleon. Now, Inteleon, Logan called out. Inteleon suddenly became visible and aimed its finger. Use snipe shot! Logan called out. A single shot of high-pressured water exploded from its fingertip and hit Arcanine, head on. The water exploded and Arcanine staggered on its paws before it fell to the ground and passed out.
And with a single hit, Arcanine is down for the count.
The announcer called out. Crash returned Arcanine. He was now annoyed. He pulled out his last Pokeball and threw it into the air.
This is my ace Pokemon, Cinderace.
Crash said. Cinderace stood tall and proud.
Crash is down to his final Pokemon. He is now battling with Cinderace.
The announcer called out. Inteleon, use water gun. Logan commanded. Inteleon aimed his finger like a gun and blasted a high-pressure shot of water, but Cinderace dodged the attack.
Pyro Ball.
Crash called out. Cinderace kicked up a pebble from the ground, and it caught ablaze, turning into a small fireball. Then, as Cinderace would kick the fireball back off into the air, the tiny fireball grew in size until it became a big ball of flame, which then Cinderace kicked really hard and it flew and struck Inteleon. Inteleon shot another water gun.
Then use Quick Attack.
Crash ordered. Cinderace ran left and then right, then left again. Inteleon stood there shot as Cinderace picked up at full speed. Its speed then increased even more, then tripled, then moved so fast it became a blur. Then Cinderace appeared in front of Inteleon and kicked it in the face. The force and momentum sent Inteleon flying back and it crashed into the ground. Inteleon laid there unconscious. Logan held out his Pokeball and returned Inteleon, with a slight grin on his face. He knew full well Inteleon fought with all its power. Then he threw out another Pokeball, and then his own Cinderace appeared before him.
I cannot believe we have a Cinderace versus Cinderace battle. It's a fiery battle for sure.
The announcer called out.
This is gonna get interesting. I have to tilt this battle in my favor, so I guess it's time for this.
Crash muttered. Then he returned Cinderace to its Pokeball, then pulled up his sleeve to reveal his Gigantamax band. It activated and pink energy left the band and went into the Pokeball. It then became pink and grew into a rather big, massive ball.
Gigantamax!
Crash barked as he threw the giant ball into the air, and then Cinderace stood there in his G-Max form. He was massive and stood on a gigantic fireball, and his ears also looked different. That's actually pretty impressive, and kind of amusing, Logan told Crash.
Why is it amusing?
Crash asked. Logan pulled out a Gigantamax band and slipped on his wrist. Crash looked once again shocked as he watched Logan return his Cinderace. Then the band activated and the same happened with his Pokeball. It became really big and Logan threw it into the air. Gigantamax! Logan barked. Then his Cinderace returned to the battlefield in his Gigantamax form. The audience all gasped, then cheered, then sat there silent, as they watched not only two Cinderaces fighting each other, but two Gigantamax Cinderaces fighting each other. G-Max Fireball, Logan called out.
G-Max Fireball!
Crash called out. Both Pokemon unleashed their own attacks. They both jumped off their gigantic fireballs and both booted the balls of fire. Both fireballs collided with each other. Logan and Crash covered their faces due to the rippling energy coming off the colliding attacks. Then suddenly, one of the balls exploded into absolute nothing. The remaining fireball collided with the opposing Cinderace, and Cinderace dropped to its knees. Then the gigantic max energy wore off, making the Cinderace return to its normal size, and then everyone cheered as the Pokemon passed out.
And there we have it. Our incredible Gigantamax battle is over. With Crash now out of Pokemon able to battle, that makes Logan the winner.
The announcer cheered. Logan stood there victorious. He returned to his Cinderace and waved at the cheering fans. He then walked away and entered the competitor's lounge. There he ran into Crash.
You did well, man. That was insane.
Crash said, holding out his hand. Thanks, man. You're a good opponent yourself, Logan replied, shaking Crash's hand. Crash and Logan turned to the screen, watching the next ongoing fight. Whoever won that fight would be Logan's next opponent.
They're both really good. Good luck out there,
Crash said, nudging Logan in the arm. Yeah, thanks, man. Logan nodded as they both watched the battle going on the viewing monitor. Logan stood there with a small smile on his face.
Crash was played by A-Crown. The battle announcer was played by Ben Baker.
This is a quick message to my son Logan. I love you, little man. Happy birthday. You turned 5 this year, and it's just been a blast. I'm your dad, but also your best friend, and I get to relive my Pokemon days by educating you in Pokemon, and I absolutely love it. So I hope that we have more fun Pokemon adventures to come. And yeah, I love you.
This podcast is a production of the Three Ranger Bros Studios, in association with Zio to Hero, the podcast.
And there we have it, guys. Thank you very much for listening to this story. If you've enjoyed this story, then you might want to check out all of my Tiger Tales channels. I'm going to give you a quick rundown. There's Tiger Tales, the first and the original. This is a place where you'll find stories and fanfictions diving into all sorts of fandoms, including Power Rangers, Pokemon, The Walking Dead, Marvel, DC, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and so much more. Tiger Tales The Lost Stories follows the same suit, but all the stories on that channel are in the first person perspective. Then there's Tiger Tales Game Over, a channel where all of the storylines are related to video games in some way or another. Then we have Tiger Tales X, where I write official crossovers that aren't needed but are very wanted, and crossovers I thought might work. Then, of course, we have Tiger Tales Mysterious Origins. This is the YouTube channel dedicated to my own original stories. All the stories on this channel are original and my own, and it also answers questions on certain characters throughout my stories, like William Cranston, Mr. Pocket, and Ace from the Color Matrix. If you've enjoyed these storylines, then please make sure you check out the following podcasts. Storytime with Cosplay Dude 637, Power Rangers Universe 19, Sailor Moon E, and The Order. And make sure you check out 2 YouTube channels, Nostalgia Time and the One Piece audio drama. They are all written and read to you and edited by Cosplay Dude 637, my Parabatai and best friend. Then, make sure you check out the podcast Nerds Through Comics, which is directed by Mark, the Red Corner Ranger. This is where he adapts comic books into audio dramas and also uploads his own original Power Ranger storylines. We are the Three Ranger Bros Studios, a collaborative project, and we are all voice actors and helpers of each other's stuff, so make sure you go check us out. We're in association with the Zio to Hero podcast, so a huge shout out to Billy and Jim, the co-hosts, and of course the podcast and the community that they lead. If we're shouting out podcasts, I have to shout out Jared, the host of If You Give a Dad a Podcast. Make sure you check it out because he interviews some fantastic guests, from wrestlers to voice actors and the such. And of course, if we're talking podcasts, I have to mention my own, the Tiger Nexus podcast, where I interview content creators and geeks alike. A huge shout out to all my supporters and followers, my voice actors, the people who co-write my chapters, and the swords. So huge thank you, and of course, a big shout out to A Crown. Specifically him, because he helps me a lot with some of my stories, specifically the Color Matrix and the chapters that go on Tai Tales Game Over. Thank you very much guys for listening. Now don't forget to subscribe to the channels, like the videos, and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. With that being said, I shall see you guys in the next one.
That before we can...
Don't touch my Pringles.